My name is Andrea. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last decade building a business from scratch. I remember the early mornings, late nights, and countless cups of coffee that fueled my dream. My company, a small boutique in Medellin, Colombia, had become a staple in the community. People knew me for my impeccable taste in fashion and my dedication to customer service. I had worked tirelessly to create a brand that was not only about selling clothes, but about making people feel seen and appreciated. My boutique was more than just a store. It was a place where people came to escape, to relax, and to find pieces that made them feel confident and beautiful. As I look back, I realized that my success wasn't just about the clothes. It was about the relationships I built with my customers, the trust I earned, and the reputation I forged. People trusted me with their style, and I took pride in delivering more than they expected. My boutique became a hub for women who appreciated quality, style, and a personal touch. I knew my customers by name, and they knew me. We shared stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. My business was my passion, my sanctuary, and my pride. But behind the scenes, I had someone I trusted implicitly to handle the financial side of things. Someone who knew every detail about my business, every transaction, and every profit. Someone I thought I could trust with my life. His name was Carlos, my accountant. I had hired him a few years ago, and he had proven to be efficient and reliable. I had given him full access to my accounts, and he had never given me a reason to doubt his integrity, or so I thought. I was about to find out that trust can be a double-edged sword. I met Carlos through a mutual acquaintance. He came highly recommended, and his credentials checked out. We sat down in my office, and he presented himself as professional and knowledgeable. He explained how he could help me manage my finances, and I was impressed by his confidence. "Andrea, I'll be honest with you," he said. "Your business is doing well, but there's room for improvement. With the right financial strategy, we can increase your profits and reduce your tax liability." I liked his approach and his enthusiasm. We discussed his fees, and I agreed to let him handle my accounts. Over time, Carlos became more than just my accountant. He was my trusted advisor. I would call him with questions about investments, taxes, and financial planning. He was always available, always willing to help. As the months went by, I grew to trust Carlos implicitly. I would sign documents without thoroughly reading them, confident that he had my best interests at heart. He would tell me about new investment opportunities, and I would invest without hesitation. My business continued to thrive, and I attributed it to Carlos's expertise. One day, I asked Carlos to review my financials and provide a forecast for the upcoming year. He spent hours poring over the numbers, and when he finished, he presented me with a detailed report. "Andrea, your business is in excellent shape," he said. "You're making more money than you think. I've identified some areas where we can cut costs and increase revenue. With these changes, I'm confident you'll see significant growth next year." I was impressed by his analysis and grateful for his hard work. I told him to implement the changes, and he assured me that he would take care of everything. I felt fortunate to have him on my team. But as time went on, I began to notice small discrepancies in my accounts. At first, I brushed them off as minor errors, but as the discrepancies grew, I started to feel a sense of unease. I pushed the feeling aside, thinking that Carlos would never betray my trust. After all, he was my trusted advisor. I was reviewing my company's financial statements one evening, trying to make sense of the numbers. I noticed that there were some discrepancies in the accounts, small amounts here and there, but nothing that seemed too out of the ordinary. I thought maybe it was just an accounting error, something that Carlos would be able to explain. The next day, I asked Carlos to come to my office and discuss the discrepancies. He arrived promptly, and I showed him the financial statements. He glanced at them briefly, and then his eyes scanned the room. "Andrea, I think I know what might be causing the issue," he said. "Let me take a closer look." He spent the next hour poring over the financials. his brow furrowed in concentration. When he finished, he looked up at me. "It seems like there might be some accounting errors," he said. "I'll make sure to correct them and get everything back on track." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. I trusted Carlos, and I knew he would take care of it. But as the days went by, I noticed that the discrepancies didn't seem to be getting any better. In fact, they seemed to be getting worse. One evening, I decided to dig deeper. I spent hours reviewing the financial statements, looking for any patterns or inconsistencies, and then I saw it: a large transfer of funds to an offshore account. I felt a knot in my stomach as I realized that something was very wrong. I quickly called Carlos and asked him to come to my office. When he arrived, I showed him the transfer. "Carlos, what's going on?" I asked. "Why is there a transfer to this account?" He hesitated, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "Andrea, I can explain," he said. "It's just a temporary loan. I'll pay it back, I promise." But I knew that wasn't true. I knew that something was very wrong. And in that moment, my trust in Carlos began to crumble. I asked him to provide me with all the financial records, and he hesitated again. This time, I saw fear in his eyes. "Andrea, I don't think that's a good idea," he said. "Why not?" I asked, my voice firm. Because you might not understand," he said. I knew then that I had to take control. I told him to provide me with all the records, and he reluctantly agreed. As I began to review the documents, I realized that the situation was much worse than I had imagined. The transfers were just the tip of the iceberg. There were fake invoices, unauthorized payments, and a trail of financial deceit that went back years. I felt like I'd been living in a dream world, and suddenly I was awake. I knew that I had to take action, but I didn't know where to start. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed. But most of all, I was determined to get to the bottom of it and make things right. I sat at my desk, staring at the financial statements in front of me. The numbers seemed to blur together as I tried to make sense of the discrepancies that had been plaguing me for weeks. I had trusted Carlos implicitly, thinking him to be a competent and honest accountant. But the truth was slowly unraveling, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. As I dug deeper, my anger and frustration grew. How could he do this to me? I had given him my trust, and he had betrayed it. The more I uncovered, the more I realized the extent of his deceit. Fake invoices, unauthorized payments, and a trail of financial deceit that went back years. I felt like I'd been living in a dream world, and suddenly, I was awake. The realization hit me hard. I thought about all the times I had signed documents without thoroughly reading them, confident that Carlos had my best interests at heart. The thought made my stomach turn. I picked up the phone and dialed Carlos's number. When he answered, I asked him to come to my office immediately. He hesitated, and for a moment, I sensed fear in his voice. "What's this about, Andrea?" he asked. "I think you know exactly what this is about, Carlos," I replied, my voice firm. "Get here now." He arrived promptly, his face pale. I showed him the financial statements, and he knew he was caught. "Andrea, I can explain." "Explain?" I interrupted. "You've been stealing from me for years, Carlos. There's no explanation for that." He looked down, shamefaced. "I was in a tough spot, and I didn't know how to get out. I thought I could pay it back before you noticed." "You're not just in trouble, Carlos. You're going to jail," I said, my anger boiling over. The sound of sirens echoed outside my office building. I had called the authorities while waiting for Carlos to arrive. As the police took him away, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that the ordeal was finally over, and anger that I had been so blind to his deceit. The days that followed were a blur of meetings with lawyers and law enforcement. I worked tirelessly to unravel the financial mess Carlos had created. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to rebuild my business and move forward. As I sat in my office, staring at the financial statements once more, I knew that this was just the beginning. I would have to work hard to regain my losses, but I was ready for the challenge. The truth had been revealed, and now it was time to face the future. 1. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the stack of financial documents in front of me. The revelation of Carlos's betrayal still lingered in my mind, and I knew I had to act fast to mitigate the damage. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my lawyer, Maria. "Maria, it's Andrea. I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Andrea, what's going on?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. "I've been betrayed by my accountant. He's been stealing from me for years, and I need your help to get my finances back on track," I explained. "I'll be right there," she said. "We'll work together to get this sorted out." Maria arrived at my office an hour later, and we began going over the financial documents. She was thorough and professional, and I felt a sense of relief having her by my side. "Okay, let's get started," she said. "We need to assess the extent of the damage and come up with a plan to mitigate it." We spent the next few hours poring over the documents, identifying areas where we could cut costs and implement new financial controls. Maria was a wealth of knowledge, and I was grateful for her expertise. As we worked, I couldn't help but think about Carlos and his betrayal. How could he do this to me? I had trusted him implicitly. Maria noticed my distraction and put a hand on my shoulder. "Andrea, we'll get through this. We'll rebuild your business and make it stronger than ever." I nodded, determination rising within me. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. We finalized our plan, and Maria outlined the next steps. "We'll need to notify the authorities and file a report. We'll also need to start implementing new financial controls to prevent this from happening again." I nodded, taking notes as she spoke. I was ready to take action and move forward. The first step was to secure my assets and prevent any further financial damage. Maria helped me set up new accounts and implement new financial controls. We also notified the authorities and filed a report. As the days went by, I worked tirelessly to rebuild my business. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to succeed. I pored over financial reports, met with my team, and worked to implement new strategies. It wasn't easy, but I was driven by a desire to succeed. I was determined to rise above Carlos's betrayal and build a stronger, more resilient business. And as I looked at the financial reports in front of me, I knew I was on the right track. The numbers were starting to make sense again, and I could see a light at the end of the tunnel. I was taking action, and I was taking control. I was going to rebuild my business, and I was going to thrive. The days turned into weeks, and the reality of my situation began to sink in. I had lost a significant amount of money, and my business was struggling to stay afloat. I had to make some tough decisions to try and salvage what was left. I met with my team and explained the situation. We had to let some people go, and I had to take a pay cut. It was a difficult conversation to have, but I knew it was necessary. As the weeks turned into months, I struggled to come to terms with what had happened. I felt like I had failed, like I had let everyone down. I questioned my judgment and my ability to run a business. I had to deal with the financial consequences of Carlos's actions. I had to negotiate with creditors and try to find a way to pay off the debts he had accumulated. It was a stressful and overwhelming process. I also had to deal with the emotional toll of what had happened. I felt betrayed and hurt by Carlos's actions. I couldn't understand why he would do something like this to me. I tried to focus on rebuilding my business, but it was hard. I felt like I was walking through a minefield, never knowing when something would blow up in my face. One day, I received a call from a supplier. They were threatening to cut off our credit unless we paid our outstanding bill. I knew I had to act fast to resolve the situation. I spent hours on the phone, negotiating with the supplier and trying to come up with a solution. Finally, we reached an agreement, as long as we made regular payments. I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that I had averted a potential disaster. But the consequences of Carlos's actions were still far-reaching. I had to deal with the aftermath of his betrayal, and it was taking a toll on my business and my personal life. I knew I had to keep moving forward, but it was hard. The consequences of Carlos's actions were still being felt, and I wasn't sure how long it would take to recover. I spent long hours at the office, trying to get my business back on track. I worked tirelessly to implement new financial controls and to rebuild my team. It was a difficult road ahead, but I was determined to succeed. I was going to rebuild my business, and I was going to make it stronger than ever. The consequences of Carlos's actions would be felt for a long time, but I was ready to face them head-on. I was ready to take control of my business and my life. I was determined to move forward, no matter what it took. I was going to make sure that my business survived and thrived, despite the challenges that lay ahead. The road to recovery would be long and difficult, but I was ready for it. I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way and to come out stronger on the other side. I took a deep breath and looked at the financial reports in front of me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to take on the challenge. I was ready to rebuild my business and move forward. In my quest to dig deeper, I sat staring at a stack of bills and financial reports in front of me. The weight of Carlos's betrayal still lingered, but I knew I couldn't let it consume me. I had to take control of my business and my life. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my business partner, Sophia. We had been friends for years, and I knew I could count on her to help me navigate this difficult time. "Sophia, I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Andrea, what's going on?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. "I've been dealing with the aftermath of Carlos's betrayal," I explained. "I need your help to get my business back on track." Sophia arrived at my office an hour later, and we sat down to discuss the situation. She listened intently as I explained the extent of the damage and the steps I had taken so far to mitigate it. "I think we need to take a closer look at the financials," she said. "We need to understand where the money is going and how we can stop the bleeding." I nodded, grateful for her insight. Together, we pored over the financial reports, identifying areas where we could cut costs and implement new financial controls. As we worked, I felt a sense of determination rising within me. I was going to take control of my business, and I was going to make it succeed. "We need to implement new security measures to prevent this from happening again," Sophia said. "We can't let our guard down for a second." I nodded, making a mental note to look into new security protocols. I was determined to protect my business and my customers. As the day went on, I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in weeks. I was taking control and I was making progress. I looked at Sophia, and she smiled. "You're doing great, Andrea," she said. "You're taking control of the situation." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. "I couldn't do it without you," I said. Sophia smiled. "You're stronger than you think, Andrea. You've just been through a tough time, but you're going to come out of this even stronger." I felt a surge of determination. She was right. I was going to come out of this stronger. I was going to take control of my business and my life. As the sun began to set, I looked out the window, feeling a sense of hope. I was at a turning point, and I was ready to take control. I was ready to move forward, and I was ready to succeed. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready for it. I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way and to come out stronger on the other side. I took a deep breath and stood up, feeling a sense of determination. I was going to take control of my business, and I was going to make it thrive. I sat in my office, reflecting on the past few months. The experience had been difficult, but it had also been a valuable lesson. I thought about Carlos and the betrayal he had committed. I thought about the financial struggles and the challenges I had faced. As I looked back, I realized that I had learned a lot. I had learned the importance of being vigilant and proactive in business. I had learned to trust my instincts and to be cautious when dealing with others. I thought about the people who had helped me along the way. Sophia, my business partner, had been a rock for me. She had provided guidance and support when I needed it most. I also thought about the lessons I had learned about myself. I had discovered that I was stronger than I thought, and that I could overcome even the toughest challenges. As I reflected on the experience, I realized that it had been a turning point for me. It had taught me valuable lessons and had helped me to grow as a person. I looked out the window, feeling a sense of gratitude. I was grateful for the experience, difficult as it had been. It had taught me so much about myself and about business. I thought about the future, and I felt a sense of excitement. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, but I was ready for them. I was ready to face whatever came my way and to come out stronger on the other side. I stood up and walked over to the window. I looked out at the city, feeling a sense of determination. I was going to move forward, and I was going to succeed. The experience had been difficult, but it had also been a valuable lesson. I had learned and grown, and I was ready for whatever came next. I took a deep breath and turned away from the window. I was ready to face the future, and I was ready to take on whatever challenges came my way. The lessons I had learned would stay with me forever. I would always be vigilant, always cautious, and always prepared for whatever came next. I smiled to myself, feeling a sense of confidence. I had been through a difficult time, but I had come out stronger. I was ready for whatever the future held. Now it's your turn. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a similar situation? How did you handle it? Let's discuss. If you found this story insightful or relatable, please share it with your friends and family. Your support means the world to me. Follow me for more stories like this, and let's stay connected.